Alright, so welcome everyone to this lesson. So far we have discussed about the very important steps for the creation of the disintegration effect using the nucleus cloth, where we have learned in the previous lesson the creation process of important selection sets by manually cutting down the mesh with the help of the cut tool and then converting these important selection sets to the edges, further to the faces, further to the edges mode, so and so. And then finally, we convert the mesh to the nucleus cloth and we tweak certain properties of the nucleus cloth. And then finally, we do have got an independent mesh, which is no more, associated to the nucleus cloth. So this is the final result that we have achieved from our previous lessons. And in this lesson, just have added some few more lights and I've given some textures to the to my character just to have some better look and feel, because the look and feel is really very important to achieve some in the VFX. So this is just a temporary lighting setup, okay, nothing too much fancy. Now we are entering inside the second phase of our course, that is the disintegration effect by adding the particles. Well, it is the second phase, but this would again be divided into two sections. In first, we're going to create the primary chunks, or you can say the primary particles, followed by the secondary particles. Alright, so now what I'm going to do, I've got my mesh selected and I have got the under the input node I do have got the man mesh underscore 001 cache that I've just baked that out using the geometry cache option under the animation menu. And I'm going to select the mesh. I can go to the dynamics and can use the particles. Let's say this time we're going to go for the emit from the object, and we do have the rate particle per second and the emitter type, which is very important. I'm using the surface, so make sure that you're not using the omnidirectional anything, otherwise the particles would have come out from the per vertex info. So we're going to use only the surface, in which the whole surface will go to act as a source of the emission for the particles. And the most important thing is to have the need parent UV. We're going to see how this will going to add a lot of change to our process. Okay, so followed by the basic emission speed attributes. I don't want to go for any speed, although you'll get to know that the settings which we would be using for this kind of particles, in this case the speed and the normal speed will not going to act anything. The default settings for 1 and 1 for the normal speed and all, okay, but since in this case I don't want any speed as a normal speed, so I can just create the process. I would like to get rid of these lighting mode, since I don't want the system to affect with light. If we're going to go to the hyper shade, I do have the by default Lambert, and this will going to get assigned to the particles. So just to make them a little bit more distinctive, I can select the particle system and I can go for another Lambert. Let's say in a name that let's say it should be ash underscore particle. Yeah, now we can select the particle 1 and say right click, assign material to selection. We can give the color to the red. Alright, so that would be easier for me and for you to recognize what is going on in the scene. So by doing this, you can see the man underscore ash underscore mesh is the body, the representation of the mesh, which is assigned with the geometry cache, and this also being served with the emitter. So the rest of the things I've added inside this group, which is a scene underscore element having one camera, that I've just added inside here. Okay, nothing more. So we'll start with the playing the timeline, and as soon as I'm playing the timeline, you could see that alright, all the particles are now getting applied all over the surface. But there is one huge problem, and the problem is that you can see the particles are not getting adhere to this mesh. As such, no algorithm have been written, so we can't say that it's the mistake of the particles or there is any problem. No, there isn't any problem. We need to assign these particles over this floating mesh, or you can say the disintegrated bigger pieces of the chunks. So let's just do one thing. We can go to the outliner. First of all, let me just gonna put some keys over the rate because I don't want the consistent and the continuous flow of the particles. So what I'm gonna do first, let's say we are at 0 frame, we can put a key, and let's say if I'm at frame 10 and maybe 10 to 15, I guess 15 would be the perfect value. We can say another key, put 1 frame ahead, and now this should be the 0. So let us say for the first primary particles, they need to be get initiated from 0 frame to the 15 frame and has to get stopped onto the 16th frame. Okay, but the distribution on the graph editor has to get a little bit different. I need to set the interpolations, so I can go to the graph editor, press the F focus key, and I'm going to go for the stepped tangents. Okay, I don't want the soft, or we can say the gradual stoppage of the particles. Also aware of the fact that the particle count is really less, so I'm gonna crank that up to approximately 200,000 particles, which is of course too much. But let me just gonna first of all see some few settings. Okay, so here is the scene after the 15th 16th frame. There is no more emission of the particles, and now the real game begins. Now you could easily see that, guys, the particles are still stick to their previous positions. One reason is that we haven't initiated any speed, we haven't initiated any normal speed, so that has to be like in this way. Okay, so the next thing would come, how do we going to address this issue? Well, I think so you could be thinking that what exactly is the use of this particle. Well, there is a lot of use. You're gonna get to know further. This particle system is the only particle system which would be using for the particles as well as for the fluids. So you could think that these red particles we are using to emit these secondary particles in the form of the instancers, which we'll be covering in the upcoming lessons. And these red particles are solely responsible for producing the fluids. All right, so this is really very important section of this course. Okay, I'm gonna take a pause over here, and I think so for this lesson we do have enough info. We're gonna move to the next lesson where I'm gonna talk about more the info regarding the particles, how to make them correct, and so many other things. All right, so see you up in the next lesson.